All right, let's jump into another deep dive. Today we're heading to Rio de Janeiro,
Really?
but not for the beaches this time.
No. No
We're
beaches.
going deeper
Much deeper.
into the heart of Rio's favelas.
Yeah, the favelas.
You guys sent us a really interesting mix of YouTube videos for this one.
I was really excited about this batch of sources. Yeah.
You've got journalists in there,
Yeah.
vloggers,
Yep.
even residents, right?
Even residents giving us that firsthand perspective. It's great.
So we're going to get, I think a really well-rounded view.
It's like having multiple pieces of a puzzle, right? We're getting on-the-ground reporting.
Yeah.
Personal stories.
Mm-hmm.
Even, I think, a little bit of adventure.
Oh, yeah, definitely some adventure in there.
It'll be fascinating to see how all of those pieces come together.
Exactly. And that's what I love about these deep dives. You never know what you're going to find.
Always a surprise.
Always a surprise. So speaking of surprises, did you know that some residents in these favelas, they don't even pay for utilities?
Really? I did not know that.
It's crazy, right? Or how about this?
Yeah.
Their main mode of transport might be a guy with a tricycle?
Wow.
We're going way beyond the headlines today.
Let's get into it then.
So where do we even, begin?
Well, I think to understand the favelas,
Yeah.
we have to understand their history.
Okay, so take us back.
All right, so these communities, they didn't just appear out of nowhere.
Right.
Their roots go all the way back to the late 19th century,
Okay.
when Brazil finally abolished slavery.
So we're talking about, the legacy of historical injustice.
Exactly, and we see it so clearly here.
Yeah.
Those newly freed slaves, they're often denied basic rights.
Makes sense.
So they were essentially forced to carve out their own communities on the edges of the city.
At the margins, yeah.
Exactly. And then you have this wave of rural migrants coming in, right?
Huh.
They're seeking a better life in the city.
The classic story.
Classic, right? But they can't afford housing.
So they build their own.
Exactly. And that's how the favela became such an integral part of Rio's landscape.
And it's not a small part, right?
No, not at all.
One of the sources said that a quarter of Rio's population
A quarter.
lives in favelas.
It's incredible when you think about it.
That's huge.
It really highlights how central these communities are to Rio's identity.
And, visually, they're just so striking. I was looking at these pictures, and
Oh, the visuals are captivating.
the houses are practically stacked on top of each other,
Yeah.
all along these hillsides.
Yeah.
It's almost like a city growing organically.
Right. It's this incredible contrast to the planned city areas.
Huge contrast. So how did these communities, actually function?
Well, that organic growth you mentioned,
Yeah.
it speaks volumes about the resilience
Okay.
and resourcefulness of these residents
Mm-hmm.
because they often lacked, that formal oversight from the city.
They kind of had to do it themselves.
Exactly. So they created their own system.
That makes sense.
Think resident associations, managing their own utilities,
Wow.
even creating these really vibrant internal economies.
So it's like self-governance almost.
It is, and we saw a really great example of this in one of the videos in
Yeah.
Rocinha, which is the largest favela in Rio.
Right, Rocinha.
They have this really well-organized resident association.
And they do what?
They coordinate public projects,
Mm-hmm.
manage resources. It's really impressive.
So we're seeing this interesting tension, right?
Yeah,
Like the
definitely.
autonomy and the self-sufficiency of the residents,
Mhm.
but then also the need for external resources and support.
You hit the nail on the head. It's a balancing act.
A real balancing act.
And a theme that we'll see playing out as we dive deeper into this world.
I'm ready to keep diving. Where do we go next?
Well, let's talk about another big tension in favela life.
Okay.
The relationship between the residents and the authorities.
Especially the police, right?
Especially the police, yes.
From what I saw in the videos, it seems incredibly complicated.
Oh, it's incredibly complex.
Yeah.
And this is where we have to talk about pacification.
Pacification. Yeah, I saw that term come up a lot.
It's essentially a series of police operations
Okay.
that are aimed at, driving out drug gangs from the favelas.
So on the surface, it sounds like a good thing, right?
You would think so, yes.
Less crime, more safety.
Right.
But some of the videos showed a much more nuanced reality.
Definitely, pacification is a very controversial topic,
Uh-huh.
and it's definitely not a simple solution.
Okay, so break it down for me.
All right, so on the one hand,
Mm-hmm.
you have residents who feel safer after pacification comes in.
Okay.
There's less violence, less, open drug dealing, so they feel a sense of relief.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But on the other hand, you have residents who view it as an invasion.
Right.
They see it as the police disrupting their way of life.
Like, even if it reduces crime, it comes at a cost.
Exactly. There's a sense of resentment towards this outside force coming in and trying to control their community.
It's almost like a double-edged sword.
Perfect way to describe it.
There's this DW documentary on Canalo Hill
Yeah, I saw that one.
that I thought really illustrated this.
What do they show?
Well, after pacification came in,
Uh-huh.
there was definitely less gun violence,
Okay.
but there was also more government control
Right.
and even like higher costs of living for the residents.
And on top of all that, we have to acknowledge the really difficult reality of police violence in Rio.
Yeah, that was disturbing to see in the videos.
The police killing rate there is just astronomically high.
Higher than in the US.
Much higher, even during simple arrests.
Wow.
It paints a very bleak picture.
Yeah.
So for favela residents,
Right.
police intervention is a really risky proposition.
Absolutely.
It's like, who do you turn to for protection when the people who are supposed to protect you are also a threat?
It's like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Exactly. And it raises all these really crucial questions about power dynamics.
Mm-hmm.
Whose security is actually being prioritized here?
Right.
And does pacification truly benefit the residents in the long run?
Or does it just create a whole new set of challenges?
These are the tough questions we need to grapple with.
Absolutely. Food for thought, for sure.
Definitely.
But, amidst all this tension, all the challenges, what really struck me was the resilience and creativity of everyday life in the favelas.
That really shines through, doesn't it?
The videos showed that it's not just about poverty and danger. There's this vibrancy there,
Uh-huh.
this incredible sense of community,
It's amazing.
and a real spirit of making things work.
Yeah, despite all the hardship, they find ways to not only survive, but thrive.
And I think that's a really important point for our listeners to remember.
Absolutely.
This is not a one-dimensional story.
No, not at all.
There's so much depth and complexity here.
And so much to learn from these communities.
Okay, so tell me more about this, like this spirit of making things work. What are some examples?
Well, think about Adado from Racina. His story was incredible.
Yeah, what was his story?
He started out as a simple laborer,
Okay.
but he had this entrepreneurial spirit.
Uh-huh.
And he eventually built his own incredibly successful transport business.
Wow.
And now he's a pillar of his community, providing jobs, supporting others.
That's amazing.
It's truly inspiring.
It is. And I have to bring up that one video again
Which one?
where they had to physically pull up a barrier.
Oh, I remember that
On
one.
this unpaved road
Yeah.
just to let a car pass.
Talk about improvisation.
Right, like daily life is an exercise in resourcefulness.
Exactly. They adapt and overcome. It's in their DNA.
It makes you realize that, for people living in these favelas, it's not just about surviving.
Yeah.
It's about creating opportunities,
Absolutely.
even when the odds are stacked against them.
It's a powerful lesson for all of us, I think.
It really is. It's about finding a way no matter what.
Exactly. And that's just the beginning. We've got so much more to uncover in this deep dive.
I'm ready for it. Let's keep going.
All right, let's move on to our next batch of sources then.
Sounds good. Lead the way.
Okay, so this next set of videos, I think, offers a really interesting perspective.
Okay, what is it?
Well, it's the perspective of outsiders.
Outsiders.
Yeah, people who don't live in the favelas but have ventured into them.
So like tourists.
Some tourists, but also, journalists like we saw before, academics even.
Interesting.
And what's fascinating is that these outsiders often come in with certain preconceived notions
About what?
about favelas, about the people who live there.
Like what kind of notions?
Well, often they're expecting danger, poverty, a very bleak picture.
Yeah, I can see that.
But what's so interesting is that they're often surprised by what they actually encounter.
So what do they find?
They find warmth, resilience, a vibrant culture that defies those expectations.
It challenges their assumptions.
It completely flips the script.
It's like what we were just talking about with Adado, right?
Exactly. It's about looking beyond the surface.
And seeing the human stories.
Yeah, the individual stories that make up this community.
So who are some of these outsiders that we're going to hear from?
Well, there's Drew Binsky. He's a travel vlogger.
Oh, yeah, I've seen some of his videos. He's great.
He went to Parasopolis, which is another one of Rio's favelas.
And what was his experience like?
Well, he was definitely apprehensive at first. He even admitted to being a bit scared.
But then
He was completely charmed by the community.
really?
He's talked about the warmth of the people, the incredible energy of the place.
And it's like the reality on the ground is very different from the image that's often portrayed in the media.
Exactly. And that's a key takeaway here.
Mm-hmm.
We have to be careful not to let those media portrayals, those often sensationalized stories,
Yeah.
shape our understanding of these complex places.
Right. Like, are they helping us see the full picture, or are they just reinforcing stereotypes?
It's a question we should always be asking ourselves.
Especially when it comes to places like favelas.
Absolutely. And as we delve deeper into these outsider perspectives, I think we'll see this theme emerge again and again.
The importance of challenging our own assumptions.
Exactly. And being open to new perspectives.
That's what these deep dives are all about.
Absolutely. It's about expanding our understanding of the world.
One conversation at a time.
One story at a time.
All right, so let's hear what these outsiders have to say.
Let's do it. I'm ready to be surprised.
Me too. Let's see where this takes us.
It's really interesting how these sources, even the ones from inside the favelas, They present such different perspectives on the role of drug gangs.
Yeah, that was something I noticed too.
Like, it's almost like a puzzle with missing pieces.
It is. It is. On the one hand, you have these documentaries and news reports, right?
Hmm.
They really highlight the danger,
The violence?
the violence of these gangs,
Yeah.
and the fear that residents have of getting caught in the crossfire.
You really feel that fear, right?
Absolutely. But
Yeah.
then in some of the vlogs, especially the ones where, the vloggers really spent time with residents.
Like Pudai did?
Yeah, exactly. There's this sense of almost like acceptance.
Acceptance.
Yeah, or even dependence
Dependence on the gangs.
on the gangs for like some semblance of security.
That's a strange thought.
I know, it's so complicated.
It is. It is.
Like, I remember this one quote from a gang member. I think it was in that Vice News video.
Okay, yeah.
He said something like, "For the people in my neighborhood, I'm a hero because we guarantee their safety.
Wow.
There's no theft here in the favela."
So they're providing a kind of twisted security.
Yeah, exactly. And it made me wonder, are these gangs actually filling a void left by ineffective governance?
It's a really complex question.
Mm-hmm.
Because in a way, they are stepping in where the government hasn't,
Providing services.
or at least a warped sense of order and stability.
Right, even if it's based on fear.
Exactly, but it challenges our simple understanding of, good guys versus bad guys.
Completely, because it's not just criminals versus innocent residents.
No, not at all.
The sources showed how intertwined these gangs are with the community.
Yeah, they're not just outsiders coming in.
No, they're often people who grew up in the favela.
Right.
Their families still live there.
Exactly. It creates these really complicated webs of loyalty.
It does. It makes it so hard to, untangle who are the victims.
Right, who are the perpetrators.
And who's just trying to survive in a system where the lines are blurred.
It throws those easy narratives out the window, doesn't it?
Completely. It makes you realize that it's not black and white. It's all shades of gray.
Definitely.
And then you add in the issue of the police.
Oh, yeah, the police.
It was clear from the videos that for a lot of residents, police presence is met with more fear than relief.
It's heartbreaking, isn't it?
Even when they're supposedly there to, pacify the favelas.
Yeah, because the reality is,
Yeah.
the police in Rio, they have a reputation for brutality.
They do, and it was really disturbing to see it in some of these reports.
It was.
I mean, we talked about this earlier. The police killing rate is just
staggering.
staggering, and it's much higher than even in the U.S., which, has its own problems with police violence.
Absolutely. And that really paints a dark picture.
It does. It's like, for these favela residents,
Right.
they're caught between two terrible options.
Mm-hmm.
On one side, you have the violence of the drug gangs.
Right.
And on the other side, you have the brutality of the police who are supposed to protect them.
It's no wonder so many residents feel trapped.
Absolutely. And I think this feeling of hopelessness really comes through in Bianca's story.
Oh, yeah. Bianca?
A single mother from the DW documentary.
Yeah, she really stuck with me.
Me too. I mean, she's struggling to feed her children. She's relying on those meager social benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And her story really underscores how poverty and inequality are at the root of so many of these challenges.
They're the underlying cause.
And that lack of opportunity, especially for young people. Yeah, it makes it so hard to break that cycle.
Like a vicious circle,
Yeah, we saw how these kids face discrimination,
Mm-hmm.
limited access to education,
Right.
and then the constant threat of being pulled into this violence.
It's a recipe for disaster.
It really is, and it makes you realize that this isn't just an individual problem.
No, it's a systemic one.
Exactly. It points to a need for the government to invest in long-term solutions.
Absolutely. Instead of just focusing on pacification.
Which is a short-term solution.
Yeah, it's a Band-Aid.
Exactly. What about investing in education?
Yes.
Healthcare, job creation programs.
Those are the things that could really make a difference.
Right, things that could actually empower these residents to build a better future.
I'm totally with you on that.
Instead of trying to control and suppress, what if the focus shifted to opportunity and empowerment?
Now, that's a powerful idea.
Right. It seems like a much more sustainable approach.
Absolutely. And speaking of empowering communities,
Yeah.
let's talk about the role of the arts in favela.
Oh, yeah, that's a great point. The videos really showcase that, especially music, dance, and graffiti.
Mm-hmm. They're forms of expression, social commentary.
Community building.
Yeah, and it's incredible how this creativity thrives, even in the face of all these challenges.
It's inspiring. Like in that DW documentary, we met Ame.
Ame, the graffiti artist.
Yeah, and his work wasn't just about beautifying the community.
No.
It was a powerful form of protest against those government policies he disagreed with.
He was using his art to make a statement.
Exactly. He was turning adversity into art, using his voice to challenge the status quo.
It's so powerful.
And it's not just visual art either.
No, you're right.
Remember that rapper in Pudai's vlog?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
He talked about how funk music, which originated in the favelas,
Mm-hmm.
it gives residents a way to express their reality?
To tell their
Their
stories.
stories. And I was thinking about all those vibrant murals that you see all over the favela walls.
Mm.
It's like they're reclaiming their space,
Mm-hmm.
turning it into something beautiful.
Exactly. It's like they're
Yeah.
taking back control.
And it's not just about art either, right? Think
No.
about Adato, who built that transport business from nothing,
Yeah.
or those residents who formed those associations to manage their own resources.
Right.
That's pure innovation. It's resourcefulness in action.
It really makes you wonder,
What?
what if that ingenuity and creativity were supported and nurtured by the government?
Instead of being stifled.
Yeah, what if favelas were seen as hubs of potential and innovation?
Instead of problems to be solved.
That's a really powerful way to look at it.
Right, like we tend to focus on the negative,
Mm-hmm.
but there's so much positive energy there.
There is. And that brings us to another fascinating perspective.
Okay, what is it?
The perspective of these outsiders, these travel vloggers, who often go into favelas with certain expectation,
And then,
and then those expectations are completely shattered by the reality they find.
like Chrubinsky in Parasopolis?
Yeah, he's a great example.
He admitted to being apprehensive at first?
He was expecting danger,
Yeah.
but instead he found warmth, resilience, a vibrant culture that just defied his expectations.
It's a good reminder for all of us.
It is.
To be open to having our assumptions challenged.
Absolutely. And to listen to those lived experiences of people from different backgrounds.
Because the reality is often very different from what we imagine.
Exactly. And I think that's something the sources really highlighted well.
What do you mean?
The complex humanity that exists within any community,
Yeah,
regardless of how it's portrayed in the media.
absolutely. And that leads us to another really important point.
What's that?
This tension, right?
What tension?
The tension between this desire for progress
Okay.
and the fear of losing the essence of what makes favelas unique.
Mm-hmm. That's a real dilemma.
It is. Like, on the one hand, you want these communities to thrive.
Of course.
You want them to have access to the same opportunities as the rest of the city.
Right, you want to improve their living conditions.
Exactly. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
you don't want to erase their history.
Their culture.
Their culture. You don't want to gentrify them to the point where they lose their soul.
It's like, how do you find that balance between modernization and tradition?
Exactly. It's a global challenge.
It is. It is.
We see it playing out in so many different contexts.
Absolutely. And it's playing out right before our eyes in Rio's favelas.
It's that push and pull between integration and autonomy.
Right.
And finding that sweet spot is really tricky.
It's like walking a tightrope.
It is. So what do you think? How do we strike that balance?
Well, I think we need to start by really listening to the residents themselves.
Empowering them to have a voice in the process.
Exactly. Because they're the ones who know their communities best
They know what they need.
and what they want for their future.
It's about working with them, not imposing solutions on them.
I couldn't agree more. It's about collaboration and respect.
So where do we go from here? I mean, this deep dive has been so insightful.
It really has. It's opened my eyes to so many different perspectives.
Mine too, and I think there's still so much more to uncover.
There is. There is.
So what's next in this exploration of favela life?
Well, I think in our final part, we need to look at those specific challenges
Okay.
and the potential solutions.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Because while the challenges are significant, the potential for positive change is there.
It is. I'm ready to explore that, are you?
Let's do it. I'm ready to be inspired.
Yeah, it really is a tough question, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
how do you make sure these favelas have the same opportunities as, like, the rest of Rio?
Right.
But at the same time, you don't want to...
Lose what makes them unique.
Exactly. You know what's interesting, though?
What is?
Even with all these challenges, the thing that really struck me from the videos was
Oh, yeah.
the emphasis on family
Mm-hmm.
and faith.
Yeah.
Like, in a lot of the videos, it seems like those are, like, pillars of strength.
That's true. You see that a lot. Even when facing all these hardships, residents find comfort and support
Yeah.
in their families and in their religious beliefs.
It gives them hope, right?
Yeah, it's like a source of hope and purpose when everything else feels so uncertain.
Like Bianca
Oh, Bianca, yeah.
from that DW documentary.
I remember.
She said her faith is what keeps her going.
Keeps her strong.
Yeah, strong. And, you know, she's fighting for a better future for her kids.
For her kids, that's everything.
It just shows you, even in the toughest situations, people find a way to hold on to hope.
To love. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I think you see that reflected
In what?
in their aspirations for their kids.
Of course, every parent wants the best for their children.
Exactly. Like Rocky in that documentary Central video.
Rocky, yeah.
Remember him? He was the guy carrying those heavy loads.
Up and down those steep steps, yeah.
All day. But his dream is to see his son become a professional football player.
Wow.
Yeah, he wants his son to escape that cycle of poverty, you know?
It's a universal dream, wanting a better life for your kids.
It is, and it shows how important education is. Like, it's a pathway to opportunity.
It is, but unfortunately,
Okay.
access to quality education, it's still a major obstacle for so many young people in these favelas.
That's what's heartbreaking.
It is, because they have so much
I
potential,
do.
so much creativity, so much drive.
But they're often denied the resources they need to really succeed.
Yeah, it's like the system is holding them back.
Yeah, and that limited access to education
Yeah,
just perpetuates that cycle of poverty.
exactly. It makes it so much harder for residents to improve their lives.
And that's why I think those NGOs we saw in the
Yeah, the
videos,
community
they're
organization,
doing such important work,
they are.
providing those educational programs, those support
They're
systems.
filling a crucial gap.
Exactly. They're giving these young people a
A
chance.
fighting chance, yeah.
Okay, before we wrap up this deep dive, I think we have to talk about
The elephant in the
the
room.
elephant in the room, the drug
Oh,
trade.
yeah, the drug
I
trade.
mean, the videos really brought home
What do you mean?
the scale of it all.
The
This
complexity
complexity, it's like a whole other world.
operating within these communities.
And it's a stark reminder, isn't it,
Of what?
of those deep-rooted social and economic inequalities that
Fuel this illicit trade, yeah.
and I don't think there's any easy answers here.
No, definitely not. It's not a problem you could just, arrest your way out of.
Exactly. I mean, Timmy Carter's vlog, wow.
What about it?
Seeing those open-air markets
Yeah.
where they're selling drugs right alongside
Alongside what?
everyday things like fruits, vegetables.
Wow, that's surreal.
It was. And then, just witnessing residents openly using cocaine.
In public?
In public, it was eye-opening, to say the least.
It speaks to a level of normalization, doesn't it?
It does. It's fascinating, but also really disturbing.
It is. It is.
And it really highlights how challenging this issue is to address.
Mhm.
It's not just about law enforcement,
It's about
tackling those root causes.
the poverty,
Yeah, the lack of opportunity.
the allure of fast money.
Exactly. It's complex.
It is. But I think the first step is acknowledging that complexity.
Understanding those intertwined factors.
Right, because then we can start to grasp the magnitude of the problem.
And maybe even start to think about those more holistic solutions.
Yeah, solutions that actually address the underlying issues.
So as we wrap up this incredible deep dive,
It's been quite a journey.
it has. I want to emphasize that despite all the challenges,
Mhm.
the favelas are also places of incredible resilience,
They are.
creativity,
Uh-huh.
and community spirit.
We saw so many examples of that.
We did. Individuals, organizations.
Working tirelessly to make things better.
to create a brighter future.
And that's what gives me hope.
Me too. It's inspiring, and for everyone listening, I hope this has sparked your curiosity to learn more.
To dig deeper.
Yeah, to challenge your own assumptions and to really appreciate the multifaceted nature of favela life.
Because these sources, these videos, they're just a starting point.
Exactly. There are so many stories waiting to be discovered.
So many perspectives to explore.
So until next time, keep exploring
Keep questioning.
and keep diving deeper. 42 ADF.